and we prayed, and we talked together, we shared good food, and shared some times together. So part of the intended goal, it was under the umbrella of pilgrimage. So we took seriously the whatever happens version of pilgrimage. But part of what we were saying as a potential goal at the beginning was things like taking time away from all the busyness and all the craziness and all the stimuli and giving ourselves space to think, space to see nature, space to maybe interact with God and hear from God a little bit. So we tried a few different versions of things like that, spending some time outside. Charles Eckstein, if some of you know him, one of our ministry module students, he was there every evening playing music in a hall that they had. They call it Sila Hall. And it was just contemplative music. You just show up and sit. So that was, the evenings were invitational to come out to that. And that was kind of what it was. So, a month later, it would have been right in the middle of the experience last time, this day a month ago. Just kind of gathered together to say, okay, so we experienced all of that, and we'd like to share some snippets of it with you. And I've asked students to share, and I've said, no agenda. You can share something that went really well, something that didn't go well, expectations that were realized or not realized. But what was a snippet of your experience there to share with the rest of the community? And then, so each of them is going to share for just a couple minutes about one of their experiences, and it's a way to open up the door to it so you can get to know a little bit of what it was about. And then we could ask some questions after that. We could leave. Maybe we'll all be crying at the end. I don't know.
Bonding moment.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll each share for a little bit. Peter Groom may show up surprisingly. He said he may or may not come. So if he comes, he'll take my spot. And if not, maybe I'll share. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. And anyways, so Nigel's going to start us off, and we'll share a couple stories.
Yeah, so Shushan was, I think, a really great endeavor. I think it was a really great little trip that we took. Part of it was to give us a reprieve from our studies, and part of it was, to create space for something else to happen in that reprieve. And I think, both happened, and, well, for myself, I should say. And I think there were some really great outcomes. I don't think all of them were, we talked about, not all of them were like maybe strictly fun, but I think most of them were quite good. And so I appreciate that about it. For myself, the theme, I guess, of the couple sessions that we did was trust for me. We did an exercise where we just kind of talked about, we threw out words. What was the specifics there? Were we just talking about what was on our minds, or something that we're, how did it come up? I threw out trust as my word, but.
So the trees? The tree, the branches and the roots.
Things.
Yeah. We talked about like desires, right? Yeah. So anyways, trust was one of my strong desires. And as we, kind of came back to it and went out into nature, and just kind of developed the idea that started with our kind of identification of what are some of our deeper desires. There's like branch desires and root desires. And I felt like a really root desire for me was trust. Having something to trust in, being able to trust. We talked about some, branch things being like, I'd love to have fun all the time, and I'd love to like do things, and I'd love to have, sunshine and comfort or some of these things, but in contrast to maybe someone else as being safety, I felt like trust was at the root of something that I really wanted. Where it's kind of an anchoring point, I was thinking of it as. To go out into dangerous places, maybe, in a good way. But then having something to come back to. Otherwise, for my personality, I think I can just imagine myself like anywhere and find myself swimming in the options, like too many options of like I could go here, I could do this, I could do all these things, and then I kind of get lost and sometimes feel like I'm floundering. It's funny, there's sometimes these like core values that you're taught as a kid that seem to be very obvious or overstated, maybe, like you can trust in God. But then I'll find myself in places in my life where I'm like asking a question and I find that the answer is something that's just kind of been thrown at me all my life, but it takes on like new meaning. Like, where's something that I can like put my trust in that I know won't fail? Something bigger than myself, you know, so I don't get lost in all my own agenda, so I don't get sidetracked. Like, what if there was something like that that I could trust myself to and be anchored to, and that would give me something, you know, a place to propel myself forward and it's like, wow, what could it be? So there was one of those moments of like, wow, I really need trust, or I really seek something that I can put my trust in, something that's proven itself to me, and then finding, you know, my searching gaze alighting on like this passage actually from Rachel. She had shared in one session, and this really spoke to me in that moment, and I think it's since then I've come back to it, and I'd like to keep it in my peripheral view for a while, so that, you know, as I don't know, need to look up from my work, I'll settle on it and have that reminder, because I think it's going to become important to me even more so. So she gave us a little handout. It's Jeremiah 17, 5-8. Cursed is the one who trusts in human strength and the abilities of mere mortals. His very heart strays from the eternal. He is like a shrub in the desert that never grows and shall not see when relief comes. He will live in a desert wasteland, a barren land of salt where no one lives. So that's the first half. And that kind of landscape is quite, I think, frightening to me. Imagining myself being there, because it's such a place of like loss and lack, where I desire so much vitality. The second half goes on, but blessed is the one who trusts in God. The eternal will be his confidence. He is like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots beside the stream. It does not fear the heat or even drought. Its leaves stay green and it keeps on bearing fruit no matter what it faces. And so, against my swirling thoughts, this, even the wording of it, the eternal will be his confidence. Like, I can't think of a much stronger anchoring point than eternal confidence. And it's not a trapped place either. Like, now I can't go out. Now I can't be free to be me. I have to like stay in one place in a little cage. And that's what really spoke to me too, is when planted by the water, it's actually liberating. Even heat, even drought, and these things that can, come against a tree, they don't phase it. But the vibrance is there. Its leaves stay green and keeps on bearing fruit, no matter what it faces. So that's a little snapshot of Shushan for me. It's very good.
Going a little bit off of what Nigel said, my word for what my deepest desire is purpose. And there was more on the opposite of what was my biggest fear, in that I realized a couple of years ago that my biggest fear is waking up one day and realizing that I've wasted my life. So purpose, it's huge for me. And speaking of my purpose, I finished this baby, this journal, and it's like 320 pages, ridiculously long. And it was just, I guess, a huge reflection on where I've come since then. It took me just under a year to finish it. I started it in Saskatchewan and I finished it in Cape Breton. And when I started in Saskatchewan, I had no idea that I would end up living on the other side of the country. And just this huge journey and being able to find myself where I am. A little bit of a side story. No, I'll get to that after. So it was really interesting. There's a lot of things just I was trying to connect and grasp and bring together that had happened in the last year or even in the last couple of weeks. And coming to Shushan, it was really good, but on the last day, I can't remember his name, New Zealand guy, awesome accent. Charles comes up to me, he's like, Mary, can I I can't do the Can I pull you aside? I want to talk to you, I want to tell you something. And he was super mysterious about it. I was like, am I in trouble? He said, no, don't worry at all, I just want to talk to you. And so that evening, I went over to Selah Hall, and was hanging out, and he's singing. He's like, oh, Mary, I'm so sorry, I completely forgot. And so we start talking, and before, he's like cleaning up the shell hall, and he asked me, he's like, well, by chance, Mary, do you happen to be Catholic? Yeah. What gave me away? Like, what I do. And I was saying, no, it's just like I was in prayer and I really felt like I should tell you about this, and I just felt the Holy Spirit tell me, like, ask her if she's Catholic, and if she is, just tell her. Okay. What is it? And he just starts, he was really mysterious about it. He was talking, he's like, I really feel like your name, Mary, is just super prophetic almost, in the sense of Mary is just, the mother of God, is very feminine, and how did he go after that? He said, you're very, from when I first met you, I just had this sense that whether or not you intend to, you're going to be bringing people to God through your femininity, which was really interesting. Because he was saying he felt like, from a Protestant perspective, that a lot of people see faith as something rather masculine. They see Jesus, they see him on the cross, they see, but yet there's this huge feminine side to it, and that seems to almost be forgotten. And he said that when he saw me, he had that almost feeling of just, I'm bringing people to Christ through my femininity. And I guess it's really, really interesting that he should tell me that. Throughout that week, I had this really interesting image of, I was wearing this yellow dress and I was just spinning around, and just with the whole sense of purpose, I really felt like God was trying to tell me something. And I just kept on asking him, like, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to tell me? And God was like, or Jesus, I should say, was like, what if there is no point to it? I'm like, there has to be a point! And just being able to go with the flow, I guess, and just be able to accept whatever it is that God is trying to tell me, but not try to overthink it and have that purpose all the time. And yeah, and it's going back to just the femininity. It's interesting. This is kind of a side story. But when I was a little girl, I would only wear dresses. That's the only thing I would wear, and I wouldn't wear pants. I would just wear, tights, super girly. And then something changed. I don't know what happened. I guess I was made fun of as a girl for being so girly. Like I would refuse to play the boy part. Like I would get offended and start crying. And so I just stopped wearing dresses, and I would wear jeans all the time, and sweatshirts, and baggy sweatshirts and t-shirts, and that was all I would wear. So the last year, I guess, even in my journal, just reflecting on what's happened, it was this huge realization that it's okay to be a girl and dress like a girl and look nice. And Mother Mary, I think, has had this huge role in that. And just Christopher West, he's an amazing speaker he's an American, but he's traveled across the world and given talks on John Paul II, Pope 2 popes ago, about theology of the body, and just he speaks about Mary and how she's just a beautiful image of what it's like to be woman. And I think Mary's just had this huge role in kind of allowing me to accept that. but bringing people to Christ through that. So it was just a really interesting reflection on how by just being, you can have purpose.
Going with the flowy.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
Following up these two sucks.
Still following up. There's B.
I made a lot of realizations about myself being there, because that's just what I went there to do. I didn't want to participate in a lot of group things. I just wanted to be by myself. And I spent a lot of time at Cielo Hall thinking. And I came up with a bunch of realizations about myself that I didn't like. Like, I'm not my own person. I've never lived for myself. Like, I've always lived in other people's images of me. And that's just always been my life. And then at Shushan, I was like, oh, I want to change that. And then I got really emotional about it. And I didn't miss home until I went to Shushan. And then we did just passing the key around. It's like, how are you coming to this? Like, how do you feel? And I had all these great feelings, like, oh, I love this place. It was amazing. And as soon as they handed me the keys, I just started crying. And I was like, I miss home so much, and I'm so overwhelmed. And I don't know where it came from still. Like, it was just so shocking to me that it just came out like that. And then I stopped and see my mom on the way home, which was amazing. But I spent most of my time just getting caught up on readings. I did bring schoolwork with me. And sitting at Cielo Hall. And walking down to Cielo Hall was the coolest thing in the entire world, because the first night they set up all the tiki lights and made us walk one by one. And it was like a Harry Potter movie. I just pretended that I was in the Harry Potter movie and sang theme song in my head and just and
What every great spiritual experience should be.
I remember being so excited that I was going to walk home on my own on like the third night or the second night. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this on my own and walk by the tiki torches. And I was so excited. And I walked home by myself and I ran most of the way because I was scared of the dark. And I really like nature. It is my favorite thing in the world. Like, I could live in the woods and be content for the rest of my life. So doing all the work was great, and jumping into the dock on the last day was really fun. And then me and Chantal, on the first day that we did work, went down to by the Cielo Hall, and we had the fire that we had to maintain, which was a pretty big fire, and we went a little crazy with it. If you turn your head, just like turn your back to Cielo Hall, all it was woods and fire. And they started playing. Charles started playing his guitar out in the middle of the woods, and it was so Celtic. It was Celtic music, and I just got lost in myself a little bit and went a little bit crazy. And I kicked off my shoes and was like, I'm going to be one with nature, and I was dancing around. Yeah, and then the ashes were like going up in the air, so it kind of looked like it was snowing. And I legit in my head pretended that I was in this time like far ago where nobody else existed and there's no technology, and I was like loving every second of it. And then my socks caught on fire. Twice. And Chantal didn't even warn me the first time. She's just like, oh, hey, Steph. And I looked down and I'm like, ah. So I still continued to like be in the mood, and after catching myself on fire for the fourth time, I was like, okay, this is it, I'm done. And I didn't really enjoy it much after that. But it was fun. I just loved every second of it. And me and Nigel and Mercy and Holly and Mary all sat and laid under the stars one night until like 2 in the morning. I was trying to be creative because they're like, oh, let's figure out what we're going to see in the stars. I'm not a very creative person. So I was like, okay. And I was like trying to find all these things, and at first it's like, oh, it's a triangle and it's a square. And then I was like, it went from that to seeing a flaming pencil shooting through the air and a dancing man doing like and I was seeing yeah, I was just go dancer. It was pretty cool. I seen some pretty cool stuff, and then they made fun of me, so I stopped dancing. It was so much fun. I loved every second of it, and I wish I didn't have to leave. So yeah.
Well, every expectation I had of Shushan went completely opposite. Originally, I was like, yeah, I'm going to Shushan. I'm going to go back home to Cape Breton. I'm so excited for that. And I was just like so excited just to see the beauty of Cape Breton again and just kind of be home. And then after like the second day, I was like, wow, I really want to go back to SSU now. So that didn't turn out quite as I expected. when I heard about all these group sessions that we were gonna do, I was like, that's gonna suck. Like, I was not excited for that at all. And then it ended up being one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. Like, just sitting and almost like creating a better connection with everybody there, just being able to talk like so openly about what we were thinking, what we were feeling. It was very comfortable, which I also didn't expect, because I was like, there's a lot of people here, I'd never say anything that I'm thinking or feeling to, like, I don't know, and then it became like just so easy to do, which was really nice. And again, the work, I thought that was gonna suck too. I ended up loving it. It was probably the best part of every day. Just being out in the woods, dragging all the logs and branches out to the fire, burning things, and just having fun. And what Stephanie was saying about when Cheryl was out in the woods playing music, I thought that was amazing. Like, we were just there and throwing things in the fire and going a little nuts with it. And then it was just kind of out of nowhere. We just heard this music coming from the woods. And one of the ladies there actually watched the fire for us so that we could run through the woods and find him, which was a great little adventure, because there was like no telling where he was. You just had to go by the sound and try to find him through that. Yeah, after we found him, we found the extension cord that led right back to him. So, going back was a lot easier. All the reflecting that I did there was pretty great. I didn't have much expectation about like what I was really going to reflect on or what I was going to think about or anything like that. And then it ended up becoming just this really emotional week of realizations and coming to the conclusion that I have a lot more doubt in what I believed in than I realized that I did. And it was nice to have time to sit out in the woods and just think and just try to find the answers that I was looking for, which I didn't, but it was nice to be able to have time to think about it. And my favorite place there was in the woods, and it was like what was left of what would have been a little house. It was all the rock foundation. It still had this big chimney coming out of the ground, and that's where every time we got to go outside for our reflections during the big groups, I just went and sat in there, and I thought it was the most beautiful place I've ever found, really. And overall, Shushan was the opposite of everything I expected, but it was still really great.
A couple days before we left, we had a meeting, and it was like, okay, so you need to take care of what you need to take care of before you go, so you can just be there. And I was like, I don't really think I need to take care of, but 2 nights before we left, I had a huge fight with someone, and then spent the whole rest of the next day being really angry at them and avoiding them, and then by the end of the night, I had gotten over it and had forgiven them. And I felt like I just went through this short period of mourning. And then, and I feel like that freed me up to experience a lot with Shushan, just unintentionally. That exercise we did with the desires, like your root desires, I just thought of one, and it was the word challenge. To be challenged in my life, and I think it's important that we challenge each other into being better and more of who we want to see ourselves be. I was really amazed by just it was like my first raw experience of God. Like, I'm really into like the theological working side of Christianity and don't really care much about the spiritual side a lot of the time. But I think God was just like, hey, Naomi, I'm here, you know? like you can try to get, like I can live out like the life of Jesus or what I think, God wants the world to be like, all I want, but, there's something about being reminded, like God, like God being like, yeah, I exist, like for realsy.
Did you say it just like that?
No.
Okay.
I had no idea that this was going to happen, and I really loved it. I had such a good experience. Just it happened on most of it happened on the first day, and I spent the whole rest of the week being like, what is this about? And I had a talk with Charles too, just like I was randomly just walking down to the boys' cabin to try and hang out with Nate. I hang out with Nate, and he just stopped and to talk to me about timing. Like God is perfect timing. And me and Nate later we're just on the dock talking, and he goes, God, everything with God is about timing. I'm like, what? That's weird. Before that, we every day we had 3 hours of work, and I had talked with Charlotte after that. But I was building bonfires with this guy who worked there named Robbie. He's a young man, and he goes, yeah, everyone is always surprised by the presence of the Holy Spirit here. And I was like, well, that explains my morning. I feel like I'm telling the story a little backwards. That morning, I had a really interesting experience when we had this outdoor session, just for like 20 minutes, and I was like, I don't really know what to think, and then I just started pouring out all these things I wanted, like, God, this is like what I want for my life. I want to be better in like all these areas, and I just like outpouring, and then this song came to my head that reminded me of Carol, and because she had said something earlier that day about she was coming, like her hands were like clenched, and then I had this song lyric, and when my hands were clenched and now they're open. And then I just was miraculously sitting next to her in this circle where we were supposed to share with people and stuff. And then she shared with me, we were supposed to share about like someone who had, who we had like a positive interaction with or something, or we had noticed something new in them. And Kara's like, I don't really know what to say, but I had a really good chat with Mercy last night. And I was like, oh. So that's weird, and I have this song that I think that I should tell you. Like, it was interesting, and so I'm like, am I supposed to be really friends with Mercy? It's just weird. I had a really great experience with Mercy the rest of the week. Pretty close. Go into too much detail, but I just really loved that I got to experience God and have a spiritual experience. Like sometimes I can feel God's presence in like a worship service or like in a certain moment, but that was like the most prolonged, like God was like, I'm here all day for you and interacting with me.
Well, it's 1:25, so I think we should wrap things up. And,
So basically, Shushan was one big coincidence.
God incidents.
I think that's the thing for me when I reflect on it as as we were talking about doing this and setting up our goal and our heart's desires, create space. Sometimes that's just what you got to do. Create space where God can come and interact. And it's not that this was everyone's experience. Some people had expectations that didn't pan out and didn't feel quite the same way, and that's all part of it too. But we're glad that we were able to create a space where some people could at least be able to connect with God and feel like that was a real thing and a personal experience, and that's important. So.
Just one last thing. I just thought of this a minute ago. I think it was the first day that we did the landscape. where people could share their landscapes of how we were coming.
And the
Yes.
last year.
Yes. I don't know why I just thought of that, but I thought that that was a really great thing that everyone should really take a couple minutes to do, like when they're going into a new experience or going into something like Shushan, where you just think about like how you're coming there, like where you are at that moment in your life when you're going into this experience. And when they first brought up like you can kind of explain your own landscape, I was like, no, like I have no idea how to do that. Like what is a personal landscape? Like I don't know. And later on that night, it was just bothering me so much that so many people could think of a landscape and I couldn't. And then it came to me, my landscape. I had written it out. It's like I was standing on one side of a canyon, and there was no bridge to get over to the other side. And God was on the other side, and He was just like, come to me, like come on over, like be connected to me again. And then this canyon was just like all of like my sins and everything that stops me, like just on a day-to-day basis of going to God, and they were just waiting to just kind of drag me back down into that dark place and not allow me to go into God's light. And through Shushan, it was like I could slowly feel my landscape changing, like like that bridge is being built, and like I could finally like go over them and stuff. And that was a really great thing. And I thought just the whole idea of having a landscape or an idea of like how you're going into something when you first get there is such a great idea, because then you can really see your progress at the end of it and how much it's changed.
I'd say one of the other goals that we had as a group as we were thinking about this, it's that this isn't like a one-off experience, and Shushan becomes this little, magical spiritual Disneyland or something like that, where all your dreams come true when you're there and not when you're at home. So our hope was, and our hope in sharing today too, I think, is that people can take glimpses of this and be like, yeah, sometimes it just takes 20 minutes stepping out into creation to sit with your thoughts for a while. And that's something that we can share with you and invite all of you into as well, and to say, it's possible to do these little things and to get away from the bombardment of everything else, and that all of us that went on the trip, we can continue to keep doing things like that too, and keep being aware of our landscape and having realizations by just constantly engaging, sometimes in little ways, sometimes in bigger ways in these things. So yeah.
Just as a listener, if someone didn't go, I like to say that, like, I love nature too, but special for me is getting little penetrating glimpses into people's lives. And you guys just did that so beautifully today. Thank you for sharing your stories with us, because it's like, it's just, for me, I feel almost like I interacted with the experience a little bit at a distance, just by hearing these, by seeing through the windows of touch. Thanks. By the way, today's the first day that I've seen Walt's new book called Glimpses. What's it called? Glimpses of a Healthy Life? Glimpses of a Good Life. He's just produced a new book. Man, it's beautiful.
There's that time.
There's no other questions. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing.